In Israel, a spokesperson for government revealed the campaign against Hamas will pursue as soon as the resistance movement stops releasing hostages. In Guatemala, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights warned that the undue interference of the Attorney General's office in elections process has jeopardized the presidential transition and the constitutional order of transfer of power to President-elect Bernardo Arévalo. The UN COP28 climate conference formally launched a loss and damage fund alongside by vulnerable nations devastated by natural disasters linked to global warming. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We'll be with the news. Stay with us. On Thursday, a spokesperson for the Israeli government revealed the campaign against Hamas will proceed as soon as the resistance movement stops releasing hostages. On that Tel Aviv briefing, Elon Levite argued that the government will stop the pause if Hamas stops releasing hostages. Then they'll resume their offensive. The spokespersons went out. Israel has several goals in Gaza, including ensuring the Gaza Strip never threaten again the people of Israel and whip enough Hamas resistance movement. The troops in Gaza, pretty increasingly weak of most women and children held by the Hamas, were already released in swaps for the Palestinian prisoners. Today, Israel and Hamas agreed on extending their ceasefire by another day. International pressure mounted for such extending pause. It is expected that Hamas further negotiates with Israel for releasing men and soldiers.
To make the government's position perfectly clear, as the hostage release pause continues, when Hamas stops releasing hostages, we will stop the pause and we will resume our campaign against Hamas in pursuit of those three main goals: destroying Hamas in response to the October 7th massacre, bringing back all of the hostages through the application of unrelenting military pressure on their captors, and ensuring that the Gaza Strip can never again threaten the people of Israel.
Another day of truce between the Palestinian resistance movement, Hamas, and the Israeli army. The ceasefire entered its seventh day under the same term agreed upon since the beginning of its extension. However, many remain skeptical that the extension of this truce will come to an end and thus hostilities will resume. For more details, let us see what our correspondent in Gaza, Huda Higazi, has to report.
Yesterday was the sixth day of the humanitarian truce here in the Gaza Strip between the Palestinian Islamic Resistance Movement Hamas and the Israeli regime. After the exchange of hostages of this sixth day, it was hoped that the Qatari intermediaries, the Egyptians intermediaries, could reach a new agreement to extend this truce for at least 2 or 4 more days here in the Gaza Strip. However, we were waiting for several hours and there was no announcement of the extension of this truce, and at 11 p.m. local time in the Gaza Strip, there was a security meeting of the occupied territories with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the other ministers of war, and the statements of these ministers were not favorable at all. These statements indicate that they wanted to resume the confrontation here in the Gaza Strip in order to achieve the military objective of wiping out the Palestinian Islamic Resistance Movement Hamas. After these declarations, the Palestinians underwent a very tense situation, quite fearful, hoping that at any moment the Qatari and Egyptian intermediaries could reach an agreement and announce the extension of the truce. However, time ticked by, and the last hours at which the truce extension could be proclaimed was 7 a.m. However, by 5 a.m., 6 a.m., the truce had not been extended. So the Gazadis who had returned to their homes in their first days of the truce began to return again to the hospitals and Norway schools, afraid that at any moment the Israeli warplanes would proceed to bomb the Gaza Strip again. However, at 6:50 local time in the Gaza Strip, Qatar issued a statement saying that the truce have been extended by only one more day. And now, at this point, we will talk with a local to talk about his feelings, the fear he felt when he saw how the hours were ticking by and the humanitarian truce had not been proclaimed here in the Gaza Strip. What you felt when the hours passed and the night came and the truce was not announced?
We were waiting impatiently for the announcement of the truce because, honestly, we are already afraid of going back to war. We have seen the immense number of martyred children, women, the elderly, the newborns. Our children lost their classmates, their school friends. As for the children, we wanted to keep them away from this scene of crimes committed by the occupation, killing the martyrs, but in fact they witnessed scenes of horror. These images of horror, of the suffering of the children, this caused a kind of hysteria in the children. We are afraid to close our eyes, we are afraid to go to sleep and wake up in the morning to the sound of bombs and F-16 missiles. This is something very serious. This war took away adults, children, newborns, the elderly. We hope that this war will be over very soon.
As we can see, the situation of the Palestinians is characterized by fear that at any moment Israel will resume the war in the Gaza Strip, that it will resume the bombing, that more Palestinians will lose their life, more children, more old people, and this time the truce has only been extended for one day. And now the fear is that at any moment the war could resume again here in the Gaza Strip, as soon as the Israeli occupation regime does not accept the conditions of the Qatari intermediaries. So now everyone is waiting to see if today there could be another extension of the truce here in the Gaza Strip.
On Thursday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry announced that China will send a new batch of emergency humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. Briefing the media of Foreign Ministry Wang Yi, the speeches at the UN speech at the UN Security Council on Wednesday on the Gaza issue, Chinese Prime Minister spokesman Wang Wenbi quoted Wang Yi as saying that the country will send additional aid to Gaza and support the Palestinian side full membership in the United Nations. China has approved $1 million worth of humanitarian aid in cash to the Palestinian people and a shipment of its food supplies, including canned of goods, biscuit, milk, and drinking water, left Egypt for Gaza on Wednesday.
The Chinese government will provide a new batch of emergency humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. The political prospect for the two-state solution should be revitalized with stronger determination. Fairness and justice for the Palestinian question is the two-state solution, which is irreplaceable. Only when the two-state solution is truly and comprehensively implemented can peace in the Middle East be restored. China calls for an international peace conference of greater scale, scope, and effectiveness, and supports Palestine full membership in the United Nations.
And in other topics, on Thursday, China's defense ministry said that the United States should stop interfering in both Taiwan and the South China Sea, calling U.S. arms sales to Taiwan a power hurricane that is making the situation more dangerous. The Taiwan's ruling Democratic Progressive Party is turning Taiwan into a weapons depot and a powder keg, said Senior Colonel Wu Qian, the Defense Ministry's top spokesperson. Taiwan's security depends on the peaceful development of cross-strait relations instead of a few pieces of the U.S.-made weapons, Wu said at a monthly news conference.
The Democratic Progressive Party authorities solicit us support for independence and are turning Taiwan into a weapons depot and powder keg. This is pushing Taiwan into the abyss of disaster and will certainly bring huge scourge to people in Taiwan. Taiwan's security depends on the peaceful development of the cross-strait relations instead of a few pieces of United States-made weapons.
Let's take our very first break, but remember you can now join us on our TikTok account as teleSUR English, where you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights warned on Wednesday that the undue interference of the Attorney General's office in Guatemala's electoral process has jeopardized the presidential transition and the constitutional order of the transference of power to President-elect Bernardo Arevalo. The Commission urged the state of Guatemala to cease the interference of the public ministry, which threatens the democratic order and the sovereign will of the people. The President of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, announced that he will formally request 6 months leave of absence to campaign for re-election. The head of state made the announcement on national television where he confirmed his intentions to run for re-election on February 4, 2024, despite the fact that the Panamanian Constitution prohibits. The Bukele did not mention who will be his successor. He only said that the oversight of the government cabinet will be strengthened during his electoral leave, directly assigning the task to the public prosecutor.
First of all, as you all know, approximately in 3 days, I am going to request a license to the Legislative Assembly to engage in the campaign, and I am not going to be in office as president, let's say. I wanted to have a meeting before for a couple of issues that I think that are important. I don't know if some would think somehow, well, the president is not going to be so involved. Then we will be able to do this, the other, and it will be the other way around, in the sense that we are going to increase the control over the government's tax and the portfolios.
On November the 30th, the Caribbean island of Barbados celebrates 57 years of independence from the United Kingdom. Barbados is part of the Lesser Antilles. It is the easternmost of the islands. Its capital and most populated city is Bridgetown. It has a population of 284,996 people, mostly of African descent. It was conquered by the Spanish Empire in the 15th century. In the 18th century, the British made the island a colony of the United Kingdom and maintained their influence until November 30, 1966, when its people declared independence and the country joined the United Nations and the Commonwealth of Nations. From 1966 to 2021, Barbados operated under a system of constitutional monarchy with a parliament with Queen Elizabeth II head of state and the Governor General as her representative of the island. After a period of transition, Barbados became a parliamentary republic on November 30, 2021. In the south of Brazil, families of landless rural workers movements took to the streets of Rio Grande to protest and demand that the local and federal government provide aid in the face of flooding. The floods wipe out 100% of the agroecological production in many agrarian farms communities. 3,500 hectares of rice have already been lost in the municipalities of Biomãos, Santa Rita, and El Dorado do Sul. 2,700 families have been evacuated from their homes in this area, considered the region with the highest organic rice production in Latin America. Ibero-American juries affirmed that the decision of the Constitutional Court of Peru, which opens the possibility of the release of former President Alberto Fujimori, disregard the order of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. The former president is condemned to 25 years in prison for serious humanitarian rights violations in the Barrios Altos and La Cantuta cases. In this way, the jury said that the Peruvian court has failed to issue a clear and definitive pronouncement that recognizes what the court issued in that time. They said that if the decision is disregarded and Fujimori is released, the rights of victims would be seriously affected.
This is important to say. The Constitution states that the fundamental rights are interpreted in conformity with the treaties and with the decision of the court. This is what the Constitutional Court and the Criminal Code has said. Then, an international court is telling us that the Constitutional Court has dictated a decision that proves the international responsibility of the country. That is to say, it is not in conformity with the international obligations.
In the state of La Guaira, in the central littoral of Venezuela, the population is gathering to attend the campaign closing in this state. During all this week, there have been campaign closing throughout the country on the occasion of the end of the Venezuelan oil campaign of propaganda for next Sunday's referendum. This is a mobilization that will go through the main streets of the state of La Guaira in the sector known as Catialamar. It will be led by the governor of the state, who has had an important deployment during these days. National authorities and spokespersons are also expected to arrive, as has been the case in other states. Let's take our last break, but before we invite you to join us on our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on the screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Hands-on news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. One financial break, don't go away. Welcome back. On Thursday, the 28th Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, a key meeting for the future of humanity, opened in Dubai, the capital of the United Arab Emirates. Thousands of heads of states and government will be attending this global meeting on the global warming emergency to, among others, important tasks, conduct the first global study taking after the 2015 Paris Agreement comes into force, from which they will draw up a plan of action to drastically reduce emissions and protect lives and livelihood, mark the starting point for the establishment of the environmental laws and damage fund. And the United Nations COP28 climate conference formally launched a loss damage fund alongside by the vulnerable nations devastated by the natural disaster linked to global warming. The United Arab Emirates COP28 President Sultan Al Jaber told delegates and they have labor history, adding that his country will pledge $100 million to the fund.
It is essential that no issue is left off the table. And yes, as I have been saying, we must look for ways and ensure the inclusion of the role of fossil fuels.
On Thursday, about 90 protesters gathered in support of vegan food policies as attenders arrived for the first day of the COP28 Climate Summit at Expo City in Dubai. The Middle East will host the United Nations Climate Change Conference for a second year in a row over the next 2 weeks, with countries hoping to agree on a few ways to keep the planet from heating up too much by the end of the century. Protesters from around the world, Muslim women, stood outside the entrance to the summit's Blue Sun, waving flags, carrying signs, and chanting in support of mandatory vegan food policies.
We want to influence government to change their focus on food, because even there's zero emission from fossil fuels, but we have no food. So what is more important? If we have very good nature, high capacity to absorb CO2, even we have high emission from fossil fuel, it will be okay. We don't have much time left to save the world. So we need to have a mandatory policy to change our diet. We are not interested in changing people's diet, but if this action is killing our earth, we have to change it. Otherwise, we are going to have pay the price to lose our future.
On Thursday, the German government lost a key climate court case brought by environmental groups and embraced the failure that came a day before the Chancellor Olaf Scholz was scheduled to attend the COP28 climate summit. Berlin court ordered the government to implement an immediate action program after it failed to meet its own climate target in the transport and building sectors. The court said the government then adopted a climate action program in October 2023 that did not meet the requests from immediacy.
We are relieved and very much welcome the judgment, because it has made it crystal clear that the German government must honor its climate targets. It cannot postpone this year after year like a New Year's resolution, but must comply with the climate targets in every sector immediately.
And we have come to the end of this news brief, but before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscasts and contribute to provide an alternative news sources of the latest world events. You can find this and many other series on our website at telesurenglish.net, and also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, on X, and on Instagram as well. For telesur English, I'm from the South, I'm Ana Marrero. Thank you for watching.